so that others will join the session. Yeah, welcome all of you. Okay, I hope my please confirm the same. Guys, can you hear me? Arjun?
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Yes, thanks for the confirmation. Okay, I think you are also able to see my screen, right, Alivelu?
Yes, Laxman.
Yes, because someone, Naveen, is reporting that he is unable to see my screen. Naveen, please rejoin the session. Okay, so the course is Docker and Kubernetes. Okay. Okay, so let me briefly summarize what we have discussed yesterday. The software industry was facing some problem in traditional deployment process, wherein due to the operating system version conflicts and the versions of the dependencies that are required for the particular application, they are not uniform across all the environments. So in that case, what happens is there is a firefight happening between development team and testing team. Okay, in order to bridge this gap, the DevOps culture is being adopted. And in DevOps, Docker and Kubernetes are the heart. So initially, when we wanted to have Linux environment, that Linux machine can be installed. That means the Linux operating system can be installed within the same host where the Windows was running by using a tool called hypervisor. But even if you develop the application in the Ubuntu operating system, which is installed using Hyper-V, there also only source code is available. Only that source code can be transferred from the dev machine to the QA machine through some central servers called as repos. But a beautiful tool called containers. That means the container runtime, more specifically, the Docker was invented. Who was the inventor of Docker? Salman Hicks. I think in 2014 it was invented. You can go and check it. So here, if you see this environment, I will bring this to the paint. So this is the case of hypervisor and this is case of the Docker. So let's suppose that we are deploying the applications in the Linux machine. And usually if we have a single instance of Linux, then what happens if that machine, if that instance is down? Our application will be down. So in DevOps, what we do, we will deploy the same application in multiple instances. Okay, so if we have the knowledge of AWS load balancer and node groups, then you will have some idea about that. Otherwise, we will see that more clearly in Kubernetes, where we will deploy an application in containers across a distributed environment in multiple instances or in multiple replicas. All these things you will learn. These terms, even if you don't understand at this moment, that's fine. You will learn those things. So from here to here, the main difference is we have eliminated the need for installing full-fledged operating system. In case of hypervisor, we have to install the full-fledged operating system. That means, let me show you that here, Ubuntu 18 OS download. Okay, so if you choose here, the file will be about, go to somewhere. This is not the file somewhere. So let's go here. See, it is about 2.3 GB in size. But coming to our container thing, the image which we are using, which we are going to use to create the container will be about less than 100 MB in size. So imagine here the size is about 3 GB. Here the size of the image will be about less than 100 MB. See how many times we have reduced the size of the image. And why that size was reduced? Because here we are not installing the full-fledged operating system in every virtual machine. Instead, the virtual machines which are called as containers, they will utilize the underlying operating system kernel. Okay, so they will utilize the underlying operating system. But here we are installing the full-fledged operating system for every operating system. And in this setup, we will dedicate the hardware upfront. For example, if the total hardware of this host is 32 GB, if we want to spin up this machine, we have to dedicate some amount of memory to it. Let's say 4 GB or 8 GB, whether you use it or not, that will be dedicated, and that's not available for the other instances. But coming to here, we don't dedicate, there is not necessary to dedicate the resources for the container. Of course, there is a possibility to restrict the minimum and the maximum amount of resources that can be utilized by a container. Okay, but here there is no mandatory to dedicate the resources upfront to the container. Okay, so from here to here, there are two major differences. One is here in this case, we have eliminated the need for installing full-fledged operating system. That is one point. And here, the containers will utilize the underlying operating system kernel. That is one thing. And if we want to install this operating system here in this setup, it will take about 30 to 40 minutes. But in case of containers, we can spin up the containers within a second. So what is its advantage? You will see going forward in the course. This is what we have discussed. And please observe that these containers are nothing but isolated environments. The containers are isolated environment. That means they are isolated in some aspects in which they should be isolated, and in some aspects they are using the common resources. What are the common resources? The common resources of the host machine, the memory, CPU, disk, and the kernel. Okay, so this thing is the difference between hypervisor and Docker. Then let's come to the point of Docker. What is Docker? Docker is a containerization tool. Docker is a containerization tool. What is containerization? Containerization means the process of creating or making containers is called as containerization. If it is a process of creating or making containers, what is container? Container is nothing but running instance of a Docker image. Please observe carefully. Docker is a containerization tool. What does it mean by containerization? The process of creating or making containers is called as containerization. So for example, in real world, in shipping industry, so if you search for containers, see this is a container. How the containers will be created? That process is called as containerization. Container is nothing but what? An empty box. Even if you go on highways, you will see that even the trucks are loaded with the containers. Inside the containers, material will be put. Okay, so like that. In case of softwares, the container is nothing but running instance of a Docker image. Then we got a new term here, Docker image. Docker image is nothing but application along with its dependencies packed together in a file, then that is called as what? Docker image. So if I come to this image here, what is happening? Here in the Docker image, the application, I mean to say the application source code. The application source code and its libraries, they packed, they zipped into a file, then that is called as what? Docker image. So Docker image is simply packing up of application source code along with its dependencies. For example, if you take Jenkins, Jenkins is a Java based application. Jenkins requires Java. That means Java is a dependency for Jenkins. So if we pack the Jenkins application with its environment or the dependency, and if we put those things in a file, then that file is called as what? Docker image. So in few moments back, we have seen the image for the Ubuntu 18 operating system. What that image consists of? It consists of the operating system packages. Okay, so likewise, in our case, the image consists of the actual application along with its dependencies. Okay, so this is nothing but a file. Docker image is a file. Then what is container? If this Docker image is executed, then that is called as container. That means the running state of the Docker image is called as container. For example, we are installing various tools in our Windows operating system. Okay, we will just download it. The download thing is you can think of image. Once we double click and execute that, then that application will run. So that running state of the Docker image is called as container. So that means container will consist of what? Application along with its dependencies in running state. Okay, so no confusion at all. You will understand practically. Okay, I will show you. So this is the thing. So Docker is a containerization tool. Kubernetes is container orchestration tool. What is orchestration? Orchestration is nothing but management. Okay, so in Kubernetes, what we do is we will manage the containers which are created by the Docker. So management in the sense, this orchestration in the sense, automating the deployment of Docker containers in a distributed Docker host machines. Of course, you will see that during the Kubernetes course. Okay, so Docker is a containerization tool. This tool has to be installed in our machine. And in DevOps, in real time, what we do, we will install Docker in a Linux machine. And Docker desktop is there for Windows. And one point I forgot to tell you is, if this is Linux operating system, okay, if the containers are Linux containers, then the Linux containers can utilize the underlying operating system kernel. But what if this operating system is Windows? And what if we want to run Linux containers on top of the Windows? We have to install Docker desktop for Windows. And if these containers are Linux container, how can they utilize the Windows operating system? No, they can't. So in that case, what you need to do is, if you are using Windows operating system, and if we want to install Docker, we have to install Docker desktop, and along with that, we have to install Windows subsystem for Linux. Windows subsystem for Linux. Because the containers we want to run is Linux containers, and Linux containers have to utilize the underlying operating system kernel. So in case of Windows, if we install Docker in Windows, the Docker containers can't use the Windows operating system. So we have to install Windows subsystem for Linux. Simply it is called as WSL. Of course, in real time, we don't use Windows operating system in DevOps. Okay, so we will strictly restrict our discussion to Docker to be installed in Linux operating system. Okay, so now let's install Docker. For that, so everything that we discuss in the class will be practical things only, the real-time things. Okay, so first what I will do is I will go to my AWS account, aws.amazon.com. Those who do not have the knowledge about AWS, they can create some Linux machine from anywhere. The whole purpose of this AWS is for me to create some Ubuntu machine, because my machine is Windows machine, which I don't use in the real time. I want to get the Ubuntu machine, and that I want to spin up in the AWS cloud. Okay. I'm logging into my AWS account. This is the console home. Then we can go to EC2 here. Okay. Otherwise, go to services. In this, we have various services. In AWS, we have 200 plus services. And out of those, go to compute. If you click on compute, here the compute section will be open. Go to EC2 here. Okay, so this is the EC2 global view. You can go to instances here or here. So I want to go here itself. And this is not the part of the course, friends, but those who do not have the understanding of the AWS, they can follow these steps to get the Ubuntu machine. Okay, so first they need to have the AWS account. To create AWS account, you should have an email address, and along with that, you should have debit card or credit card with international transactions enabled. Then only that card will be accepted in this. Okay, so even though you are opting for the free tier account, you should provide those details as well. Okay, so in these instances, click on launch instances, and so here go to this application OS images section, Amazon machine image, click on Ubuntu. Okay, so I want to select Ubuntu 18, which is free tier eligible, and then t2.micro instance type is enough for me. So this type will decide the amount of memory and CPU that is there for our machine. Okay, so the key pair, I want to create a new key pair. So for that, I will click on this create new key pair. So give the key pair name. Now let me give it as Docker KP 2023 or else March, something like that I'm giving. Okay, so create key pair. I want to download PEM file itself, create key pair. So somebody is asking, sir, is AWS prerequisite for Docker and Kubernetes? No, AWS is not a prerequisite for Docker and Kubernetes. Why I tell you? So now in general, in real time, what you do, will use one or the other cloud, whether it is GCP, Azure, or AWS. So if you want to install Docker, where do you install? You have to install in some EC2 instance. So the whole purpose of creating this EC2 instance in AWS is to give some real-time exposure. And personally, I don't have the Linux machine in my operating system. So my operating system is Windows. I can install this Docker in my Windows machine as well, but I don't want to do that because in real time we will use Ubuntu machine. You don't need to have full knowledge of AWS for this Docker and Kubernetes. At least you should know these steps which I'm telling. Okay, this is very simple, Arjun. Okay, select existing security group. I want to just use the default security group. Okay, so I will keep other things default. 8 GB of storage is enough for us. Then after that, I'm just clicking on launch instance. That's it. So I will go to view all instances. So the whole purpose of doing is I want to get some Ubuntu machine. Okay, you can get it from anywhere. Okay, so what I will do is, this is a Ubuntu machine. Why I have created it? Because I want to install Docker in this. So the machine the machine in which Docker is installed is called as Docker host. Okay, so the machine in which Docker is installed is called as Docker host. Okay, so that means I'm going to install Docker in this. So I can name this as Docker host. In real time, how do we name it? Okay, if this Docker host is for dev environment, we will give dev. Or if it is production, you can give something like prod production along with the region name also you can give. So what's the region? Mumbai, AP South 1. Okay, Docker host prod AP South 1. Something like you can give. Okay, so let's keep it like that itself. Okay, so this is our Ubuntu machine. Then how to connect to it? How to connect to? So this is AWS cloud, and in some VPC, what we have done, we have created our EC2 instance, and this is my local machine. Okay, this is my local machine. This is a laptop. Okay, so how to connect to this cloud machine, this remote machine? To SSH into this machine, we should have its public IP address and the PEM key that we have downloaded. And what other thing we need to have? We need to have the port of that. So for SSH, it is port 22, and we should have the username. Okay. So Manideep is asking, sir, I'm not comfortable to give credit card. Can you tell it locally how much they will charge, sir? Okay, they won't charge anything. Okay, so there are some services which you will see free tier eligible. Okay, so you please go to some YouTube video how free tier account will work, and within 10 minutes you will get to know that. Okay, so whenever you are using some service, you should select the service which is having tag called free tier eligible. Okay, if you use it prudently, then you won't be charged. For 1 year it is free, those services. And you just do the steps what I'm doing if you don't have the knowledge about that. Okay, yeah, Ajay, this is a recorded session. Okay, this is a recording one. This recording will be provided. So how to connect to this remote machine? Okay, so for that you should have an SSH client. Okay, so you people may be using the putty. You people may be using putty mostly, but there is also another popular tool which is used in DevOps, that is MOBA extern. How to install that MOBA extern? Okay, of course this is not part of the Docker, friends, but those who do not have the basic idea of connecting to the EC2 instance and creating it, so I'm telling that to them. So those who already know it, it may be boring for them. So please bear with me for some time. So to connect to this remote machine, we should have an SSH client in our local machine. Putty is an example of SSH client, and apart from Putty, we have a beautiful tool called as MOBA extern. How to install it? Just go to this link. Here, so this page will be open. So just click on it. Okay, once you click on it, zip file will be downloaded. You extract the zip file. You extract the zip file. Okay, for time being, I'm stopping my screen share, friends. Now, if you see, so I have extracted the zip file which we have downloaded now. So once we extract it, this executable file will be there. Double click on it. Okay, so if you double click on it, this page will be open. Okay, these are the servers which I have already used. So in this, what you do is go to session. Okay, So now what we want to do, we want to SSH. We want to connect it to the Linux machine. So for Linux, to Linux, how do we connect? Using SSH protocol. So click on this SSH. Then here it will be asking for remote host. Remote remote host means here in this field we have to give the public IP address of that machine. Okay, so copy this, paste it here, specify username. Where do you get the username? You just click on this connect here. So here, this is the public IP address. This is the username. What the username? Ubuntu. Type the same thing here. So port is by default it is 22. Okay. So then keep it 22. Then what we need to provide? We have to provide the PIM key which we have downloaded. For that, click on Advanced SSH Settings. And here, check this Use Private Key box. With this button will be enabled. Just click on it and go to Downloads. Okay, so here, this is the file that we are interested. Okay, so click on it, then click on OK. So we are successfully connected to the Ubuntu machine. Okay, so now we are into Docker host. Then I'm just logging in as a root user. Okay, sudo su hyphen. Then how to install Docker? This is what our interest is. To install Docker, you don't need to search anywhere. You just have to come to our document and perform these steps. First, we have to go to root account. For this, we have to execute this step. This is a basic Linux command. Then by using curl, download the script. Okay, so the script is nothing but that is there here. So this shell script we have to download into our machine and execute it. How to do that? You just have to copy this, paste it here, hit enter. With that, the script will be downloaded into this file, and this is the file. Now, how to execute this shell script? There are multiple ways to execute it. Let's use this one. sh and the script file name. So with this, Docker will be installed. In this machine, we are installing Docker. So this machine can be called as Docker host because it is a host for Docker. It became a host for Docker. So that's why this Ubuntu machine is now called as Docker host. So with this, we understood what terms? We understood what is Docker host, what is Docker image, what is Docker container. Okay, so Docker image is nothing but application along with its dependencies packed together in a file. Then that file is called as Docker image. When we execute that image, then that running instance of the Docker image is called as Docker container. In Docker container, application will be running. Okay, so in the container, application will be running with its own environment. Okay, that means application will be running in an isolated box called as container. Okay, so now let's see whether that is installed or not. Yes, Docker is installed. How to check it? Docker -- version. Yes, Docker is installed. That is fine. That is fine. Just we have installed Docker. What I said, in order to run a container, to create a container, what we should have? We should have the Docker image. Okay, so I'm again telling you, you should not confuse. Docker image should be there. Once we run this image, it will become container, and these containers will be running in Docker host machine. Okay, so now I want to run Jenkins image, or I want to run Ubuntu container. Again, I'm explaining this. This is our host machine. This is nothing but an Ubuntu machine which is created in AWS using EC2 service, and in our case it is having about how much of CPU and memory. I want to show it to you everything practical and in a macroscopic manner. So that's why if you see, this is the instance type is t2.micro. So for this, where do we get the number of virtual CPUs? See, the CPU is 1. That is fine. So how much memory it is having? Somewhere it should be there. I think it is in 1 GB. Okay, that's fine. We can get it somewhere. So even if you go to some t2.micro, so there it will be provided when we are, or else you don't need to confuse. So here this is storage, that's not memory. So if you search for it, I know that it is only 1 GB of memory. Okay, so I don't want to waste much time on this. Okay, t2.micro CPU, why the memory is not okay. So this is the RAM, 1 GB. So the memory is 1 GB. Okay, so vCPUs. How many virtual CPUs? 1 virtual CPU. This is the hardware. So which operating system is installed in this? In this, Ubuntu 18 is installed. 18 is installed. Now after that, what we have done? We have installed Docker in this. Okay, Docker is installed in this. Now, what is our intention? Why we have installed Docker? Because to spin up the containers. Container is nothing but what? Running instance of a Docker image. So if we want to spin up this container, what we need to have? We need to have the Docker image in this. We need to download the Docker image. So this container is nothing but isolated environment where the application along with its dependencies will be there. For example, Tomcat. Tomcat is an application and it has its own dependencies. If we want to run the Tomcat in the container, we should have the Tomcat Docker image. If we want to run Ubuntu environment, okay, as a container, we should have Ubuntu image. If we want to run Nginx server, we should have Nginx Docker image. If we have the Docker image for the particular container, then only you can create the container from the image. Then the question is, who will create Docker images where they are available? And I'm telling you, we will create our own Docker images using Docker file during this course. But we should have some base images for that as well. So These all Docker images will be stored in some central server called container registry. What is it? Container registry. So container registry is nothing but a central server where Docker images are stored. Okay, so example for this are, one is Docker Hub, which is a public Docker registry. Okay, and JFrog can be used for these things, and we have Arbor, we have Elastic Container Registry of AWS, we have ACR, Azure Container Registry. So many container registries were there. So these are nothing but repositories for storing the container images. Okay, so Docker images are also called as container images because those images are for creating containers. Okay, so now our goal is we have installed a Docker successfully in the Ubuntu operating system. Then I want to spin off Jenkins application in the form of container. And before going to that, I want to show you generally how Jenkins will be installed. Then you will get the feel of containers. You will love the containers. Okay, so installing Jenkins in Ubuntu. Okay, so it is taking us to the Jenkins official website. So here, so to install Jenkins, the prerequisites are we should have an hardware with 256 MB of RAM minimum and 1 GB of drive space, and the recommended is this one, and these are the basic things. Okay, so apart from that, if we want to install Jenkins, you need to have what? You should have Java, because Jenkins is a Java based automation tool. We should have Java installed. If you see Java, there are different versions of Java. Which Java you have to install? There is another conflict. Got it? And after doing all these things, what we have to do is we have to perform all these steps. And there is no guarantee that all these steps will be passed and your Jenkins will be running. There is no guarantee. You have to perform all these things. It may be missing in one or the other point of time. Okay, some binaries may be obsolete. There may be version conflicts. Operating system may not support it. Different challenges are there even after doing all this donkey work. Okay, so because I'm calling this as donkey work, because if you love with the containers, you will understand the things, how easy it will be and how efficient it will be. So to install Java, you have to perform these steps, and if you want to install the Jenkins, you have to perform the steps which are there here. Okay, so based on your support release. Okay, so then Naveen, I will come to the mobile system. Please wait a moment. So these are the steps to perform. Okay, so then only your Jenkins will be up. But what I said was using containers, we can spin up the Jenkins or any application within no time. So that much super fast is containers. So now what I will do is I want to run Jenkins. Let me show you how quickly I can install Jenkins using containers. Okay, so Jenkins. So first what we need to have is we need to have the image first. Okay. So image I don't take into the consideration of the runnable time. So just I'm pulling this image. I will tell you how I am pulling this. Okay, that I have to teach. Okay, that's fine. Just I want to give the explanation. So I'm just using it. That's it, friends. My Jenkins is up. My Jenkins is up. So now let me access it. What's the port? What's the public IP address? This is, and what's the port that I am using? 9090. See how much time it took for me to spin up the Jenkins in a container. But if you go to this process, see how much work you have to do, and there is no guarantee that all these steps will be performed. But using containers within no time, I am able to bring up the Jenkins application, and I will ping my Jenkins URL in the chat box. All of you visit and confirm whether you are able to access my Jenkins application or not. Please go and check it. I have pinged the IP address along with the port in the chat box. Yeah, Naveen, you are asking something about mobile system. Please tell me that.
Yes, sir. Sir, in real time also you can able to use mobile streams, sir. I'm saying about in companies, sir.
Yes, we are using this.
Okay. Instead, I thought like that, sir. In instance only we can able to create Docker there and Docker machine, and using Docker machine only can able to work on that. So like that, I thought, sir.
Okay, in order to connect to any remote machine, you should have SSH client. So for that, we use mobile external.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Manideep, it will be asking for a password. Okay, that thing. Okay, that's fine. But whether you are able to access it. So this is Jenkins server is running. Okay, so how to use it, that is different story. Okay, I can get the password and other thing when going inside the container or in the console logs itself, it will be shown. Okay, so otherwise, what I will do is these commands I will tell you. Uh, we are in beginning stage, so I'm giving the password here, so it will take me to the Jenkins. Okay, that's not a matter. I'm not telling about that. I'm telling you about the installation and bringing up of the Jenkins server, how fast it is using containers. See it, feel it, okay, and love it. So this is how I brought up the Jenkins within no time. So why should I love this? Okay, so I don't use this. Once I fall in love with the containers, how easy it is and how fast it is. So that's why in DevOps, I said Docker and Kubernetes are the heart. Okay, that is fine. Then how I have pulled this image, where this image actually residing, that's what we have to understand. So the central server where all the Docker images are stored is called as container registry. In container registry, what will be stored? Docker images or container images, not the containers. In container registry, container images will be stored, not the containers. Containers are running instances of the images. Okay, so now Docker host, not Docker host, Docker hub, hub.docker.com is the URL. Hit this. See, this is the home page. This is the central server where the public Docker images are stored. Now I have used a word called public images. That means if I'm using public means there must be private images also. In real time, we will be using private container registries to store our application related Docker images. We will see that going forward. Okay, so but for now, this hub.docker.com is the place where the public Docker images are stored, and those Docker images are created by the community. Okay, so now I'm just searching for Jenkins here. If you see how many results we got, 10,000 results for Jenkins. That means 10,000 different Jenkins images are there. Some are customized. Okay, so if you see, this is updated 5 years ago. It is saying that this Jenkins Docker official images are deprecated. Instead, it is asking us to use Jenkins/Jenkins. Okay, so you will understand that thing. So this is the official Docker image. So what is this image? This image is nothing but a package of Jenkins application along with its dependencies. So dependencies in the sense here, so the dependencies are Java and other related dependencies for Jenkins. Okay, so this is the Docker Hub, which is nothing but the public Docker container registry. So here it is saying that if we want to download this image, pull means download. If we want to pull this image, we have to use Docker pull Jenkins. So when I use this Docker pull Jenkins, this is the image name. So that image will be pulled. Okay, so that's fine. Let's not talk about that much in this class. Then you must be knowing one thing, that here I'm executing Docker commands like this. So in order to interact with the Docker engine, which is installed in this Ubuntu machine, we have CLI called Docker. So to interact with the Docker, what we have Docker command line interface. So that is nothing but Docker. So when we install Docker, by default, Docker CLI will be installed in it. We don't need to do any extra steps. How to install Docker? We have seen very clearly. We have to execute those 2 or 3 commands. So this command and this command, if we execute these 2 things, Docker will be installed. Docker install means by default Docker CLI will be installed. Using the Docker CLI, we will be interacting with the Docker engine. That is one thing. Okay, so now when I use Docker pull Jenkins/Jenkins, where it is referring? So by default, when we use Docker pull, by default, it is referring to this repository, this registry. Okay, so this Docker Hub and the Docker software are together made. So when we are using Docker pull means you should get some doubt. Where should it pull from? So it will pull from Docker Hub by default. Okay, got it. Now, how do I know what is the Jenkins image and what are the other image? Okay, so here if you go to overview, you will get the description of that. So if you want to go to the documentation, go to it, and here see all the related information for that image. The container will be given here. Okay, so slowly you will understand what is this file. So what is this? We will learn all those things. What is this? Is a Jenkins, that is a Docker file. Okay, we will learn how to write the Docker file and everything related to Docker. Okay, mostly. Then, so that's why. So what if I want to? I just randomly search for some Nginx. Okay, see, there are 10,000 results for this as well. Okay, so here it is saying this is the Docker official image for the Nginx, and it was updated about 21 hours ago. So like that, for MySQL as well, the Docker image will be there. Someone is pinging. So Sudhakar is saying, is Docker file nothing but Docker image? Docker file is not a Docker image. You will understand the difference. Docker image is nothing but a package which will consist of the application along with its dependencies, and Docker file is different. Docker file we will create to build the Docker images. Okay, anyway, at this point you may not understand that. So that's a great section we have, and that is the heart of entire Docker course itself, to create the Docker file to make the customized Docker images. We will see that. Okay, so if you go to MySQL, so different MySQL images are given. Okay, if you go to the documentation, you will see, but mostly the first one will be the Docker official image for it. Then, so if we go to Nginx, it will be shown here. Okay, so this is the Nginx Docker image. So this is the first one. So like that, if we want to use PostgreSQL, for that also Docker image will be there. What is it? Again, I'm telling Docker image is nothing but the application. Here, the Postgre application packed along with its dependencies. That's it. That is called as Docker image. If we execute that Docker image, then that becomes container. So now this is the Docker host. I want to see the list of images that are downloaded into Docker host machine. Okay, so when we install Docker, Docker images won't be there. We have to download the Docker images from the Docker hub. How to download them? By using Docker pull command. Okay, so now I want to list out the Docker images that are downloaded into my machine. For that, we have a command called Docker image ls. That means listing of Docker images in my Docker host machine. So only one image is there. This tag is latest. You will understand this. This is the unique ID that is assigned to this image. And this was created 2 days ago. Means this image was updated about 2 days ago in the Docker Hub. Its size is 471 MB. Okay, so now I'm pulling Ubuntu image. Docker pull Ubuntu. Image ls. If you see how much is the size of this Ubuntu image, it is 77.8, about 78 MB in size. But if you take actual Ubuntu image, okay, that will be about 2.7 to 3 GB in size. So containers are nothing but very lightweight virtual machines which can be spinned up within no time, which I have demonstrated using Jenkins container. Got it? So 2 images are there. Now I want to see the list of containers. For that, we have a command called Docker container ls. Okay, so only one container is running. So this is the container ID, and the container name that we have given is my Jenkins. Of course, you will learn all those things. Just I'm giving what we are going to do in the Docker. Okay, how to spin up the containers. So we have 2 images, but we have only one container. Why? We have downloaded the Jenkins image and we have created a container from it. How to create a container from it? I have used a Docker run command, which I did not explain you. Okay, going forward, you will learn. So I have downloaded the Jenkins image and I have executed it with that container is created. I have downloaded Ubuntu image, but I did not run it. So that's why Ubuntu container is not running. Got it? So this is it for today, friends. Let's meet tomorrow. Okay, so Manideep is asking what's the difference between image and container. Image is nothing but application. Yes, its dependencies. The best example is dependencies. Best example is Jenkins application along with its dependencies. Okay, like Java and blah blah blah. Okay, container is what? So this is nothing but a file, application along with its file. So this is a Jenkins image. What I want to do is I want to execute it. I want to execute it. So this is a file. I want to execute it. Okay. So this is my mobile XML file. I want to execute it. Execute means I want to run it. To run it, what I have to do? I have to double click on that. Once I double click on that, this will be coming into running state. So like that, this Jenkins image is nothing but this file. When I double click on that, it will come into running state. So this running state is called as what? Container. Got it, Manadeep?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, thank you. So somebody is asking about classes and everything. So as of now, I don't run the morning batch, friends. So this is the only batch I'm telling because of paucity of time. So again, I'm telling the course name is Docker and Kubernetes. Duration is 45 to 50 days. Okay, so classes will be from Monday to Saturday. Timings will be 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Okay, so that is GMT plus 5.5. You know that very well. So 1 or 2 people from international people will. So in the last batch, other country people were also there. So for that, I am mentioning that this is IST. Fee is 4,000 INR. Okay, so the details were pinged in the chat. I think the institute people have sent a message in the chat in the beginning. So please refer that to make payments. So what you will get is you will get live classes plus recordings in Google Drive plus my entire notes will be given to you. So the notes will consist of about 200 to 250 pages, 200 pages, I think. So this is 70 pages approximately. And we will navigate to some official documentation wherever necessary, if you want. And then in Kubernetes, we have about 100 plus pages, I think 100 pages approximately. And we will go to official documentation. Okay. In some cases, I have mentioned them. Okay. Yeah, that's it for today, friends. Update
Sir,
to this
basic.
course.
I have one request.
Hmm.
So, what is the basic difference between Ubuntu and Linux?
So Ubuntu is a distribution of Linux. That's it.
Which means we can call. I mean, in general words, we can call both as similar.
Linux is a broader term. In that, Ubuntu is a flavor for that. You got it?
Yeah, yeah, very clear. And the
Okay.
second one is, shall we install Docker directly in VDI or VMware?
Yeah, you can install anyway. Okay, you can even install in Windows as well, but I don't recommend that because in real time, where do we install Docker? We'll install in some Linux machine only, whether it can be Amazon Linux, then it can be Ubuntu or whatever. Okay, set OS also you can install. Same commands you can use, whatever we have given in the documentation. Got it?
Thank you so much, sir. Very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So we have apt package manager command to install Docker, but I did not provide it. Why? Because if you are using CentOS, you can use the same Docker script, which is given by the official Docker page. Okay. So you can use this for Ubuntu or any Linux flavor you can use. Okay. So that's why I have given this. Yeah, that's it for today, friends. Let's meet at the same time tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.